Trios is the basis of the permaculture orchard. It's not what you think. It may be trio. You may know about it from fast food, ordering a trio. Well, the idea is it's a burger, a fry, and a drink. Well, here it's better than that. It's certainly far more nutritious for you long term than that. I'm not against a good burger though. This is a perfect time to see the difference and see trios because the trees are basically identifying themselves. We're going to take a look at trios and how it evolved. We're going to look at what it is that I mean by trios. And there's there's two main types of trios. We'll look at that as well. So just to give you a bit of the history of trios, I originally took Bill Mollison's concept, which he talked about in the book, Permaculture, A Designer's Handbook. And he had sketched in to put a nitrogen-fixing tree and then a fruit tree. And then, so a fruit tree, a nitrogen fixer, or a fruit tree or a support species. That's what he had sketched out. And if you're in a place where the soil is so badly degraded, you may actually have 2 support species and 1 fruit tree, or even more. If you just need to have mulch, then in the beginning, you may need to put in more. That's just based on your site. Most areas where you'd even consider putting fruit trees, you're probably got soil that will support trees. And I just thought I don't want to lose space by putting 1 out of 2 nitrogen fixers or support species that would not give me a crop. And that's changed since, but that was the idea. So I just wanted to stretch his original idea. And I thought, well, if we put 2 fruit trees and a nitrogen fixer, 2 fruit trees and a nitrogen, every fruit tree would be touching a nitrogen fixer at least on one side. So that fruit tree has this half from nitrogen fixer. But in fact, it's more than that because it really didn't take long to realize that because I stagger the rows, they're not trios starting in the same way. This pear tree also has this nitrogen fixer. So it's getting its fertility from more than one direction. And if I go in the next row over there, it's offset by 1 tree. But those roots, they've meshed. I know they've meshed because you literally can't dig here without hitting tree roots. So that was the original one. And because I was using 2 fruit trees, so nitrogen fixer, I had originally looked at what we had in the nursery and I put nitrogen fixer, apple, and then either a pear or a plum. We had less pear and less plum. So when I drew that up, I thought NAP was the scheme or the planting design that I used. And I thought, hey, NAP is a nap. So that was originally where I came up with nap system, but I've since gone away from nap to focus on trios because this doesn't have to be 2 fruit trees. It doesn't have to be any fruit trees. It could be a nitrogen fixer and 2 fruit shrubs or 2 fruit trees. So it could be shrub, could be tree, it could be nut, or it could be fruit. So there's a lot of possible combinations for trios. So whatever you do, just think of using it as a repeating trio as much as possible. So we would have nitrogen fixer. In this case, it's a plum and a pear. In this row, it's different. So we have nitrogen fixer. There we're missing one that died. Apple. And then we'd have nitrogen fixer, pear, apple. So your combinations vary depending on your climate, depending what you like, depending if you're selling what your clientele likes. Hey, there's so many variations, but one thing's important for trios is to realize that this trio with that pear tree and this pear tree and that plum should be different from the next trio. Because if I used, and here I don't have Obviously here I don't have a pear tree because I want to show you a pear tree. But the next pear tree will be different from this pear tree. It is actually the same plum tree because we didn't have enough cultivars, so we repeated the same plum. But by repeating with a different cultivar, you actually have a setup that is so much easier to get proper pollination. So trios are 3 nitrogen fixer or support species, and could be 2 fruit tree, could be 2 nut tree, could be a nut and a fruit. Go nuts about it, okay? So that's your basis trio. And that's the pattern. And it's really about pattern. Permaculture is pattern recognition and pattern application. So we recognize that it's not normal to have what I had here before as an organic monoculture apple orchard. That doesn't exist to have just apples. Even in an old cow pasture where there's wild apple trees, there's wild apple trees, there's cedars, there's ash trees coming up, there's hawthorn. There's diversity. If you let it naturally come, it will be with diversity. So to have all apple trees makes no sense. I never want to go back to a monoculture. So by setting up and planting with trios, you are setting up a pattern that by very design is already solving so many of the problems. And that's the beauty of trios is I say between 60 and 80% of the problems are solved just by that, just by the tree trios. You imagine, like, you're solving problems just by the way you arrange the planting design. And it makes sense because it mimics not a forest, because you don't want a full canopy. It really mimics what is happening on the edge of a forest. That's what you want to mimic. So look around your part of the world. What is growing on the edge of a forest? And that's often what would do really well, especially if it's close or if it's on your property. Those are species that would do really well if you're putting in rows of trees and you're looking for what species could I integrate. If they're already growing there, and they're growing like weeds, then they will grow like weeds when you plant them. So you won't have to do anything for them. Basically, just hold them back. If you want to learn more and go in depth also on trios and the other concepts, check out Concepts and Ideas in the Masterclass. We cover them in depth and give you a look at all the basic concepts which make up the permaculture orchard. So use trios, set them up as a pattern, and then repeat that pattern with different cultivars. So even if you're just going to alternate 2 trio patterns, and that's all. So you'll have 2 kind of pear, 2 kind of plum, and here we would have apple and pear, so we could have 2 kinds of pears and 2 kinds of apples. If I just did it and that's simple, I already guarantee a much better pollination, because that pear tree behind you could pollinate this pear tree, which is different. Already I'm setting up a pattern of success. And I can just look at these, which are they just finished peak bloom. And I mean, look at all the fruit that's set. This is too much already. I could see they will need to thin out or they will self-abort because the tree just cannot feed all these fruit set. This is all without honeybees. I don't even want to have honeybees on the property anymore. So you're solving problems. But what do I do for pollination? Where do I rent bees? I just got an email from our government with the recommendations where you could rent bees from. Rent bees? Why would I rent bees? I already have too much pollination with native bees. Another problem solved. What am I going to do? What fertilizer? Why fertilizer? I have my nitrogen fixing trees, which are my support species to support my problem solved again. Well, I don't have apple like I did. So you know what? When caterpillars get started, and a few of them have, I get excited to see caterpillars, which used to be my worst pest, because the very pattern of trios has completely solved that problem. caterpillars are a non-issue in our orchard. That is, you can't imagine how big of a problem that was. The worst problem, and it's solved. So the beauty of trios is you set up a pattern for life, for the life of your orchard, which solves problems without you having to intervene. Isn't that wonderful? So that's just using your trees, and that's not all. Like they said, but wait, there's more. Trees is what I call our horizontal trios. You know, this is the horizontal, that's this line, that's the horizontal trios of trees. But there is vertical trios. Trees, oh, but there could be something below it. In this case, shrubs. So we have all our mix of shrubs in the orchard. We'll have blackcurrant, and we'll have gooseberry, and we'll have red currant, and we'll use rhubarb as the equivalent of a shrub because they get to be big. Oh, look at that. So now, instead of trying to control vegetation, now what a problem it is, now we invite vegetation, which are other crops. Like, when I think of it, it makes so much sense. But that's why I define permaculture as applied common sense. Like, this makes so much sense. When you apply it, you realize, damn, that I've solved almost all of my old problems of the organic orchard. And you know what? I get a whole lot more diversity of crops. It's a whole lot nicer. It's a whole lot more fun just by designing it that way. Then, so that's the two of the three, because trio is three. So trees is the top vertical trio, shrubs is another layer, and then perennials. So here we have a few daylilies. We have chives. So here we have more chives. So it could be garlic chives. See, these are just about ready to bloom. Regular chives, we have Egyptian onions. We have a lot of the onion family because they are, onions love, garlic loves roses is the book, and it's a great companion plant. So using perennials for eating, for herbs, so perennial vegetables like Egyptian onion, which is a great perennial vegetable. Using herbs so that actually you could be so overly abundant in herbs, it's ridiculous. Like, you could give all the herbs you want. And I would say in the equivalent of 2 trios, which is 6 trees, you know, 3 and 3, there's your 2 trios. Could be in the line, could be, you know, 2 lines, however you want to lay it out. Just under those 6 trees, if you put 10, that's what I would recommend, you put 10 plants under each tree, that would be 60 perennials. Perennials, herbs, you will already have so much more herbs than you can use, unless you store it for the winter and you give away. That's with 6 trees. Gosh, when we started and we got all enthusiastic and put in by multiples of 100, I only did it once and I realized, okay, like, what am I going to do with all of these? We could run an herb business just with herbs, and we're not even multiplying them anymore. So we're using the space, which when we arrived here 30 years ago was an herbicide strip that looks very similar to the layer or the amount that's in plastic now. So that was what the previous owner was running his conventional apple orchard as, herbicide strip and the fruit trees. Well, now we're using that strip to grow plants. We could sell hundreds of plants, thousands, just from underneath the tree. And we get separate, like successive crops. And like they say, and that's not all. So we got a vertical trio, which was trees, shrubs, and perennials, but we even added a 4th, and you can get permaculture If you look up under the equivalent of food forests, you have the 7 layers, or even somebody said the 9 layers under trees. Well, depending on the climate you're in, yes or no. But I like to keep things simple, so I consider 3 and a bonus round. So the bonus round is before, when we planted here, it's honey locust, we have black locust, Russian olive, and a whole range of other nitrogen-fixing species. These do not produce an edible crop, but now they do. So now we've replanted at the base, very much at the base of these nitrogen fixers, we've replanted with, in this case, grape and or kiwi. So we could have grape, we could have kiwi, or we could have both. Some of the trees, I just want to try both. And so they are, and we train the branches these down so that the grape goes up. And this one is just kind of getting going. Others are way up the tree already. So now we're using that third tree, which was the original idea of it, to stretch because our nitrogen fixing isn't producing fruit. Technically, we could not even use trios. We could use Bill Mollison's original idea of nitrogen fixer fruit because we'll get fruit on our nitrogen fixers. So depending on your situation, depending on how your trios or how your soil is depleted, you can use more support species to build your soil. That's really up to you. Trios is a concept, it's a framework, it's a pattern that you set up and just keep going with.